Hello everyone. Why am I preaching today? Well, 2 weeks ago I felt God say to me, you should bring that word to the church. I knew it fitted in with the series that Paul was doing on I Like Jesus Because, but I can't lie, God has said that same thing to me a few times over during the past year, and I thought, yep, I'll do that. I've even gone as far as saying to Paul, I've got a word to bring, to which the following conversation always follows. He replies, okay, when would you like to do it? I say, don't put pressure on me. I'll let you know when, and I guess you know what happens next. Well, I'll let you know. Usually I leave it and then I lose momentum and I think, no, it's been too long now. I'll move on from there. Not the best thing to happen, but hey, can't get it right all the time. Well, this time the same conversation followed, but last week when I heard Paul speak on I Like Jesus Because He Solves Problems, I knew mine followed on from that place, and I knew I had to do something about it. So when he came in from church last week, the first thing I said was, I'll speak next week, because I believe mine follows on from yours. So no going back from that place, so here I am. I initially called mine I Like Jesus Because He Cares, but it goes beyond that. So I've called it I Like Jesus Because He Cares Beyond. 1 Peter 5 verse 7 says, cast all your cares on him, for he cares for you. And I think we'd all agree Jesus cares, but my understanding of how Jesus cares has grown recently. I was reading a book by Max Lucado called A Love Worth Giving. I've read it before, but I picked it up again during lockdown and thought, I'll have another look at that. I'm needing a bit of extra love to cope with all of these increase in the people in my house. Most people during lockdown, their houses got smaller and their households got less, but ours got bigger. As I read this book, the chapter on Love is Kind really impacted me. And as most of you know, I'm an early years teacher and I work as a childminder. In my job, we're told to look out for children's wow moments. They're simple moments that would only look like small things to us adults, but they're big things in a child's development. So, for example, I might give a child a plate of sandwiches and there might be 4 and they might say to me, I've got 4 sandwiches, and they might not have needed to count them. So that's the first time that they've recognised 4 without having to count it. So that's a wow moment. Or they might complete a puzzle on their own for the first time and they're wow moments. Well, the impact that this story had on me was like a wow moment. It was something simple, but it contained a truth about Jesus that I absolutely love. The story I'm going to use to think about how Jesus cares beyond can be found in Matthew chapter 9, Mark 5 and Luke 8. And I'm going to read it from Mark chapter 5 verses 25 to 34. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once Jesus realised that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and he asked, who touched my clothes? You see the people crowding against you, his disciple answered. And yet you ask, who touched me? But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. He said to her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. Even though this is a familiar story to most of us, I hope today I can use it to show you a different perspective, and in doing so, show you why I like Jesus because he cares beyond. In this story, Jesus asked the question, who touched me? Why did he ask that question? Sometimes I've read this story and thought maybe Jesus was annoyed that someone had touched him, stolen their healing without asking. Or maybe he just wanted to know who he actually healed. But my knowledge of Jesus knows that Jesus would not have been annoyed by someone expressing faith in his healing power. And she definitely had faith, so it wasn't that. So, Being as she had expressed great faith by knowing that if she reached out and touched Jesus she would be healed, it could have been he wanted to acknowledge her faith. Verse 28 says, "If I could touch his cloak, I will be healed." There's no doubt in her faith, but I'm not sure that was the purpose of Jesus asking that question either. So then, why did Jesus need to know? I believe Jesus wanted to know because yes, he wanted to heal her. But the Jesus I know goes beyond that. He doesn't just want to meet our needs. He isn't just interested in healing us or providing for us or taking away our fears or anxieties. Those things do show that he cares, but I believe Jesus' caring goes beyond. It goes one step further. I think Jesus asking this question shows a deeper caring. He cares enough about her to take time out to want to listen to her. He wants to hear her story, even though he already knows it. He understands caring isn't just about meeting a physical need, it's about going beyond. And that's what he does here. He listens to her. He shows her that he cares. He knows that no one has listened to her for a long time. According to Jewish law, an issue of blood had made this lady unclean. She wasn't allowed to go into the temple or be touched by anyone else. Leviticus chapter 15 says, "When a woman has a discharge of blood for many days, she will be unclean as long as she has the discharge. Any bed she lies on while her discharge continues will be unclean, and anything she sits on will be unclean. Anyone who touches her will be unclean." Furthermore then, not only was she unclean, but anyone or anything that she touched was also made unclean. The issue of blood made this lady an outcast in society. And what's more, she'd been an outcast for 12 years. Can you imagine? Can we relate to that? I don't think so. We've been under government instruction to social distance for 14 weeks and 5 days. Now we've been told not to hug or touch people. We're told to give people a wide berth, not to get too near people. 2 meters. Don't come nearer than 2 meters. And for most of us, we've not been totally alone or totally untouched during that time, as this lady was. Some of us have, but most of us have at least 1 or 2 other people that we live with. Are we moaning? Are we moaning about not being able to touch others? Are we missing other people's touch? Are we missing hugs? Most definitely we are. We need human touch. It's a basic need. It probably would be true to say that this lady had been untouched for 12 years. Imagine 12 years without touch, without hugs. Verse 26 says, she had spent all her money trying to get well. No wonder she had spent all her money trying to find healing. We've only had 14 days, 5 weeks without touch. She had had 12 years of rejection. Let's look at what the Bible says, but I'll just set the scene for those of you who don't know the story. Jairus, a synagogue leader, an important man, had come to Jesus. I expect crying, but it doesn't say that. I'm just thinking about how I would feel in this situation, because his 12-year-old daughter was dying. And he also shows amazing faith here as he says to Jesus, "Please come and put your hands on her so she will be healed and live." I would love to have faith like that, wouldn't you? Verse 24 says, Jesus went with him. So that's where he was going when this lady touched him. So we know Jesus is on an important mission. He's on his way to heal Jairus' daughter. He surely should be in a hurry, but he's not in a hurry. Would you be in a hurry? I think I would be. I'm often in a hurry when I don't really need to be. I'm just thinking my mission is too important to stop and talk, to divert and do something different, because this is my allocated time for that, and that's what I need to do, and I won't change it. Or if I have to change it, I'm irritated. Have you been there? Thinking that what you're doing is more important than anything else? The mission you're on is the most important thing? Jesus wasn't thinking like that. Jesus doesn't think like that. Why? Because he cares beyond. Jesus is never in too much of a hurry to show how much he cares. He understands nothing is more important than showing someone that you care by giving them time and by listening to them. Jesus asks, "Who touched me?" And when the woman realises she's been found out, she steps forward. Remember, this lady has pretty much been disregarded for the past 12 years. People have not really shown much interest in her. They didn't want her to come too near them. She couldn't even make a cup of tea for someone. In our house, that might be classed as lucky, as there are normally so many people around that sometimes it'd be quite nice to just make a cup of tea for yourself. But actually, it's a blessing, and she couldn't bless someone with a cup of tea, a drink, or a piece of cake she'd made. How sad is that? I think her life was lonely, and maybe she couldn't face any more rejection. So she thought it would be better not to ask Jesus. Besides, she didn't need to ask him, because she had faith to believe she only had to touch him and she would be healed. Verse 28 says, "If I just touch his clothes, I will be healed." But what she didn't realise was that Jesus would never reject her because he cares. He cares beyond. What he doesn't care about is whether you're the accepted or the outcast, clean or unclean. Well, Jesus doesn't just want to heal this lady. So he asks, "Who touched me?" Verse 32 says, Jesus kept looking round to see who had done it. Why did Jesus keep looking round? Because Jesus wants to show her how much he cares. He provides her with the opportunity to share with him her story. How does he do this? By taking time out to listen to her. He listened to her story. He took time out to listen. In Luke, verse 47, he says, she told him why she had touched him. She told him the whole truth. She told him everything, and he listened. He didn't just want to heal her. He wanted to make her feel cared for, loved. It wasn't just about healing her physical need. Of course that was important, but it was also about providing her with a new sense of well-being, a good sense of well-being, making her feel important again, showing her someone was interested in her. Jesus treated her how every human being should be treated, respectfully. He wanted to restore her to wholeness. We bring our need to Jesus, but it's not just about saying to fear, worry or anxieties, "I'm not going to let you affect me today. I'm leaving you here at the foot of the cross." Of course it's important to do that, but I believe that this story shows that's the end, not the beginning. I believe the beginning is telling Jesus why you feel like that, how that's affecting you, how that's making you feel, because he's interested in our stories. He's interested in your story. And you could say, well, Jesus knows anyway. But Jesus knew who touched him, and he knew why she'd touched him. But it didn't stop him from wanting to hear her story, from taking time out from his important mission to listen to her, to show her how much he cared for her. And likewise, in the same way, he cares about every aspect of our lives as well. I do a lot of prayer walking with my dog. Well, I did do a lot of prayer walking with my dog. Now I do a lot of prayer walking with my little puppy. I take her into the woods and I talk to Jesus. And I never wonder whether he wants to listen. I know he does. I know he cares. I come to him knowing he cares, and I share my thoughts with him. If I'm feeling sad, I tell him I'm feeling sad, and I tell him why I'm feeling sad. If I'm questioning why I reacted to someone in the way I did, or why something upset me, I tell Jesus, because I know he cares beyond. He cares beyond just making it right. He wants me to tell him all about it, because he knows the importance of knowing someone is listening to you, showing an interest in you. I share the depths of my soul, everything. I can tell Jesus everything. My thoughts, my feelings, good things, bad things, hurts, happiness, sadness. The list is endless. Why? Because Jesus wants to know because Jesus cares beyond. We all struggle with all sorts of things. Maybe an issue making us worry, which in turn makes us anxious, which in turn affects our ability to enjoy life. We all know what that place looks like. There isn't one of us who doesn't know that place. I could say to you, don't be anxious. Give it to God. It's your choice. Choose not to go to that place. Of course, all of those things are right. But Jesus' caring goes beyond that. So what I would say to you is remember, Jesus wants us to know that he cares. We need to know Jesus cares beyond the place of just making it right. So he wants you to tell him your story, why you're feeling anxious and worried, so he can listen, so you can know how much he cares. He wants to take away your anxiety because he cares. But first, he wants to care beyond and listen to your story, make you feel loved, let you know it's okay. One of the most significant words that God has given to me over the past few months is, God knows. I believe it's something that God says to me when I've poured my heart out to him, when he has shown me how much he cares by listening to me. And then, at the end of it all, he says, I know. Why does he know? Because he cares so much, he knows every little thing there is to know about us. And he cares so much that he longs for us to share our hearts with him, so he can say, I know, I've got this, I understand. Then during the day, maybe I might have a negative thought about that same situation, and I just say to myself, God knows. And I know it's all okay, because Jesus cares beyond. He cares enough about me to listen to me, to hear me, and to tell me that he knows. In the Bible, there are so many examples of Jesus caring beyond. After Jesus set free the Gerasene demoniac, who was an outcast from society, who no one dared go near, he was found sitting at the feet of Jesus. Why was he sitting at Jesus' feet? I think he was telling Jesus his story, and Jesus was listening, showing him how much he cared. Again, he didn't set him free and then rush off to his next mission. He took time out to sit with him, spend time with him, and surely that was exactly what this man needed. After all, he'd been tortured by demons for years. Jesus cared enough about him to not only set him free, but to give him a deeper healing by listening to him. He cared for him beyond. The Samaritan woman, he knew who she was and that he wasn't really supposed to talk to her, but he knew her need. He wasn't affected by the barriers that should have separated them. He saw her need and wanted to meet it. He talked to her and asked her questions that made her share her story with him. Then he gave her life-giving water, and she went away knowing she was cared for despite all that she had done wrong. The paralysed man at the pool of Bethsaida, Jesus saw his need. He knew he'd been sitting there for years just waiting for someone to help him into the healing waters. It would have been easy for Jesus to just walk over and heal him. After all, wasn't that what the man wanted? Jesus knows that we need something more to bring wholeness into our lives, so he asked him about his story. And when the man had told him and Jesus had listened, Jesus told him, get up and walk. I could go on, but I won't. Remember, Jesus cared about us enough to die for us. Jesus cared about us enough to show us the truth. He cares enough to give us instruction about the best way to live our lives. He cares enough not to scold us when we fail, but to pick us up and listen to our story so he can bring us back to wholeness. He cares so much, he always goes one step further than he needs to. Jesus cares for the sick, the lonely, the needy, the poor, the depressed, the alcoholic, the drug addict, the elderly, the anxious. He cares about you, he cares about me. Jesus isn't worried about who we are, where we've been, what we've done in the past. He wants us to share our stories with him and find a deep healing that can only come from knowing someone cares. Do we care like Jesus? Jesus cares for us beyond anything that we could ever imagine. Let us try caring for others in the same way and see what happens. I like Jesus.